A very common disagreement in Final Fantasy XIV is what exactly a mentor is supposed to be doing or is supposed to be. I wanted to shine a bit of light on this discussion with both some different perspectives as well as an explanation of what a mentor actually is and is supposed to be doing. Probably. When accepting access to the mentor crowns themselves, or whenever you toggle it on under Edit Search Info, you are prompted with this box explaining exactly what is expected of you as a mentor. 1. Provide gameplay advice for new adventurers and other players. This means that when a mentor is trying to explain something in the game to you, whether you have a sprout icon, no icon, or even a crown of your own, it is because it said they should do so right here. 2. Be an exemplar for player etiquette. This means that mentors are at least expected to be more polite than your average player. 3. Invite new adventurers to the novice network and answer their queries in the chat channel. This means that mentors kind of are expected to, when spotting a sprout, to invite them to the novice network. It also means that mentors in the novice network are supposed to be answering the questions of new players to the best of their ability. It technically doesn't say that it has to be perfectly correct, which may be surprising to some. In other words, mentors are expected to be polite and helpful players that assist the rest of the community to the best of their ability, and attempt to collect new players in chat rooms where they can receive further guidance. On the novice network part of this, I will flat out say that many worlds have novice networks that aren't great, which is a problem and really should be done something about, preferably by GMs. The two first points are something each individual mentor can fail or succeed at, however. Now, something you may be wondering about is why I keep saying to the best of their ability. This comes down to what a mentor is. Literally, in society, which is something we live in, around the world, on Earth, and not just Aetheris, a mentor is simply a more experienced person in a specific subject, aspect, or field. This means that normally a mentor is something an individual has, said individual commonly referred to as mentee, despite how silly it might sound. According to the origin of the word, we should really call the mentee the Telemachus. Anyway, a mentor is simply someone who might have more life experience or otherwise more time with the subject at hand. That means that a mentor is not necessarily an expert in the field, and it is not necessarily the case that the mentor always knows better than the mentee. In fact, a mentor doesn't even have to be an experienced teacher. They are almost supposed to just be like a big brother or sister helping you learn the ropes on a subject you are both interested in. This means that, to go back to Final Fantasy XIV, when you get a friend to pick up the game and you show them around the world and teach them this and that, teach them how to play a job, teach them where to get a specific item, teach them how to glamour, all those things are effectively the same as a mentor-mentee relationship. But because all these things can be done without a fancy mentor crown, it is naturally assumed that the mentor crown comes with greater expectations than that. Another problem is, as the mentors of Final Fantasy XIV are not made mentors of anyone in particular and are in essence told that everyone is their mentees, given point 1 in that list from before, and to simply go out into the world and help people. Because of that, you end up in situations where a non-mentor is sometimes significantly more knowledgeable on a subject than the mentor, which makes things a bit nonsensical. Now, with the actual meaning of being a mentor covered, I want to talk about a few different yet surprisingly common perspectives towards mentors, to perhaps diffuse some disagreements or at least gain a perspective. Quote, "All mentors I see are bad," end quote. Perhaps the quintessential origin of the Burger Crown mentor. Indeed, as a result of the bar to get the mentor crown being relatively low in terms of raw player skill, it is very realistic for less skilled players to get a mentor crown eventually. However, due to the crown itself making players stand out, players commonly assume a mentor should be better than the average player, nowhere in the job description, and as such, when a mentor is great, it is simply viewed as expected, while when a mentor is bad, they're an outlier worth remembering. Contrast this to when we see sprouts that are bad. where most of us let it slide because they are new players, and when they are great, they're deserving of every commendation. As an outlier, they are worth remembering. This can lead to silly takes, such as mentors are worse than sprouts, simplified to some level of hyperbole, but you get what I'm going for. When understanding what a mentor's job actually is, they aren't meant to be perfect, although they are expected to be capable of giving advice about something to some players. And as long as we get new players to Final Fantasy XIV every day, there will always be someone that any mentor crown-wearing player is more experienced than, even if that means that a mentor who isn't very skilled at the game technically is still a legitimate mentor. Quote, all mentors think they know better than everyone and are always annoying explaining when no one asked. End quote. This one is more so a boiled down version of many different takes I have heard, and it is caused by a few things. Some, I imagine and hope very few, mentors actually think they know better than everyone, which itself is somewhat ignorant. With that out of the way, some players take it very personally to get told that they're doing something incorrectly, regardless of whether they are or not. And it isn't uncommon for the reason for that to be that the person feels like the explainer, the mentor, thinks they know better, regardless of whether the mentor actually thinks like that. And when mentors try to explain something without anyone asking, this can stem from two things. The first being, well, point 1 in their job description. The second is that a lot of things in Final Fantasy XIV you will never learn if you don't go looking for it, and if you don't know you're doing something wrong, you won't know to look for it. As such, mentors cannot just wait around until you finally realize and then explain it. It is simply viewed as a better option to abruptly explain it without prompt. To give an example of how I teach players things they won't possibly know to look up, I pack a bunch of random facts and nuggets of information in a video of 10 things, and then I surprise a bunch of sprouts with the explanation of how GZDs and OGZDs work, when they would never have known to look for this information otherwise. Quote, mentors never help, they just say nothing throughout the dungeon or trial or raid. Unquote. This one actually circles back to the previous quote, as it isn't unlikely for the backlash from a mentor trying to explain something unprompted to be quite toxic at times. At some point, these mentors who, remember, are also human beings just like you and me, lose the motivation to try and give advice without specifically being asked. Some even lose the will to give advice entirely. Those, I would recommend turn off their mentor crown though. Not for any bad reason, but simply because if you aren't in the mood to be a mentor, simply take off the crown for a bit. There is also the possibility that the players that complain that mentors never help are not the same players as those that complain that mentors think they know better. However, unfortunately, the actions of one can knock on to the next. Quote, it should be a requirement to have done like the newest Savage or the current Oldsmith to become a mentor. A mentor queuing mentor roulette should know every fight they can possibly land in like their own backyard. Unquote. I've seen many different variants of this one, and I feel many of the things I've highlighted throughout this video should tell you that these kinds of expectations are way beyond what a mentor needs to be. In fact, part of what a mentor can do when mentor roulette lands them in content they don't know or remember how to beat is to use it as an opportunity to give advice on how you learn a fight, which is also something a mentor could do. I would know. This does, however, not change the fact that there are not uncommon incidents where mentors refuse to even try in these situations, like I talked about in this video. However, this can both be because the mentor simply can't be bothered, but it can also be because they have tried to give this advice before for it to fall on deaf ears, or worse, for the party to respond negatively to it. See that enough times and you would probably also just give up at the outset. Quote, mentors are rude, toxic, or somehow worse than that. Unquote. Given the surprisingly low bar to become a mentor in Final Fantasy XIV, and the surprising lack of repercussions at times for being rude, even as a mentor, it is inevitable that there will be bad eggs. Even many bad eggs. The only thing we all can do about that is write reports when anyone is going too far and being too toxic, and simply hope that mentors are held to a higher standard. I have a video where I explain how to report another player if you aren't sure how to do this. Just also keep in mind that everyone can have a bad day, and there is a difference between someone saying something offensive and you being offended. Also, being bad at the game or being bad at a fight also is not reportable, not even if it is a mentor. To round up on these things, now that you hopefully know what a mentor's job actually is, you also hopefully know what it isn't. While the system is hardly perfect and isn't always working the way it should, this is what we have. The best we can do about it is appreciate the good and great mentors and either try to help the worse mentors to get better or deal with them appropriately if they aren't exactly responding in a graceful way to it. Also, Yoshi P, please, water in cans or something instead of crowns. I also recommend having other unlockable icons you can have that look fancy, so we stop having mentors that are just mentors to have a fancy icon next to their name. Please. With that said, I would love to hear in the comments if you have had some good experiences with a mentor, whether it was simply a nice person helping you out or someone who seemed to go way beyond what they had to. I would love to hear about it. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support me and my channel, you can let the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. And if you want to give even more support than that, you can also become a member of the channel like these wonderful people here. Fun fact, to become a combat mentor, you need to have done 1000 duties, whether they are dungeons, trials or raids, doesn't matter. You also need 1500 commendations. You need an average of 1.5 commendations per duty for these two things to coincide. It is pretty commonly accepted that the commendation requirement is the most tedious to get. However, both the duty and commendation requirement is sometimes somewhat circumvented by doing certain duties that lend themselves to grind them both easily. I will refrain from giving specific examples of this.